Welcome to Beyond the Fourth Veil. I'm Darin Landers. So with me is Robert. Say hello, Robert.
Hello, Robert.
There you go. We've got a guest tonight. His name is Travis Kane. Travis is a member of Ghost Net Paranormal Investigations. They are headquartered out of Rantoul, Illinois, which is down here near me. Travis, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your involvement in GhostNet, and kind of what you guys do with your investigation?
I'm one of the investigators, and then one of the historians for the group. Trying to, when we find the location, dig up as much evidence as I can about the locations, and then when we go on the locations, if I find out anything more, we can relate it to the investigations. Like, if any significant thing happened there, we can mention it, and that might draw something out. Or names always spark interest. But what we do is we try to help people believe that there's something after this life that we have, and we like to show the skeptics that, hey, there is something here, and we have the proof to show you. And we'd love to just bring any type of evidence forward, even if we go on an investigation for 12 hours and get one EVP. I mean, that's awesome to us. We do think that's a great night. But we just try to help people out, and if we don't have the capabilities of helping them out, then we also can direct them towards the people that know how to help them out. Like, if something else is going on, then it's out of our hands to say, well, we've never tackled that, but we do know these people or this person.
And you're kind of well known within that type of community. I know that I think you guys have been featured on Discovery or Travel Channel. Travel Channel. I think they're owned by the same network essentially, but so I know that you do have credibility within that community. Why don't you kind of walk us through some of the investigations you've done recently? I know you did some of the old Air Force Base there in Rantoul.
Yeah, we did one of the buildings there on Shinu Air Force Base in Rantoul. We did one of those buildings, and we had some strange encounters throughout the night, and just a lot of body feelings. Like, you get cold spots, or your hair would raise up on the back of your neck and everything. And then we did end up catching a full body apparition walk at the end of the hallway, which was dynamite evidence to us and everything. I believe I was away from it when it happened, and then we got a call on the walkie-talkie that something just walked by the camera. We were afraid that we missed it, and then when Matt and Elena were reviewing that footage, they found it on there. And then last weekend, we investigated the Annabelle healing home in Rantoul. It's been anything from a children's home to like a place for unfit mothers, which I didn't know that. Then it was like some apartments and stuff I guess. And then it went back to like a preschool, and then it was a daycare, and then they closed because of the pandemic and everything. But that was a great night. We had stuff messing with us all night. The lights were turning on in the stairwell. We kept hearing, like, towards the end of the night, Elena was doing the Estes Method for the last thing of the night, and me and Matt were sitting there asking questions, and we kept hearing something on the stairwell behind us, and we just kept hearing little knocks and stuff. And then we did end up hearing, well, we swear we heard a little kid laugh, like a little chuckle type of laugh. We got some good things with that. We've investigated the old Florida County jail in Paxton, Illinois. That was awesome, and that's where America's second confirmed serial killer behind H.H. Holmes he was actually hung there, and his name was Frederick Holman. And we feel like we interact with him both the times that we were there. What else have we done? We've done the Roth House, which is the Watsika Wonder, or the Venom House. It's been in a couple like sci-fi movies. It's been on the paranormal shows and stuff like that. There was some great evidence there that we got to that I didn't think we would get. And in that house, there was like hundreds and hundreds of seances performed there over and over for her parents to try to contact her in the afterlife. And we've done a couple home investigations. We've did the St. Joseph Lodge a couple weeks ago. Got a good evidence, and Darin was there for that, and he heard that one EVP where that wasn't any of us talking. And then we did Halloween. We caught a ball moving off of the stairs at the Masonic Lodge down there, and that was really cool. And we've also, where else? They did Ashmore Estates before I joined, but we are planning on going back to Ashmore Estates here soon. And then we need to make it down to Alton. And then also this year we'll be at the Horror Con in Champaign again, which was awesome the first time we went there.
So why don't you kind of talk about the other members of your group? You referenced them, but why don't you give a brief introduction of the other members of your group?
Yeah, Matt and Elena, they're the founders of the group, and Matt's the lead investigator. Elena, she's our EVP specialist, and then Jack, he's our camera specialist. He just joined us not too long ago. Matt, he helps set up the plan for the night and usually determines, hey, let's do this, and go from there. Elena, if we have any EVPs, we usually let her listen to it because she's got a pretty keen ear to stuff that sometimes we don't hear, and then she points it out, and then we're like, oh, now I hear that. And then Jack, he'll sit there and watch the cameras when we need him to watch the cameras, and then he'll come out when he comes out. And we found that when we send him out by himself out of everybody in the group, that the spirits will communicate with him more than they will with us. Like there was one night where he got more evidence just coming from him than any of us sitting in a little hallway with our little spirit pods sitting there interacting, making it come closer and answering with the 1 yes or 2 no or lighting it up or everything. And we all usually try to work as a team and get everything done, but it's a challenge. I mean, like I told Darin, I was like, the one thing that everybody's asked me is like, what did you know now that you didn't know before when you're a paranormal investigator? And it's like, well, you spend hours and hours of talking to yourself in the dark. But in all, it's a great time. I love it. It's amazing.
Yeah, so we'll kind of segue then. As you mentioned, there was an investigation at the Masonic Lodge here in St. Joseph, Illinois. And basically, full disclosure, I'm a member there. So we have had over the years some reports of members being alone in the building and hearing footsteps on the 3rd floor, which is the kitchen area. And we know nobody else is in the building. So over the summer, I was up there quite a bit, helping another member's son with their Eagle Scout project. And the television we have in the lodge that we use for our educational purposes was turning it on by itself. We've had, I think, lights turn on by themselves. And when Travis and I were up there prior to the investigation, door shut by itself. So I think the door shutting by itself was probably the impetus for Travis to get his team up there. And it was an interesting night.
It was. And then we got a voice of the one guy who was the secretary for a long time. And I believe that's who it is that's there. I can't remember what his last name was off the top of my head.
I have so many questions for you guys. First of all, I want to ask Travis, as an investigator of paranormal stuff, like I'm a huge fan. Like I go like off the wall if on November 1 they're not starting to play like ghost investigation stuff, or I'm sorry, on October 1st, right? Like I want ghost investigations throughout the like Halloween for me is a 2-month thing. So I like all the ghost investigations. I've attempted to go on one or two. One, like, we didn't get access. It's just some nightmares. But I've always had some suspicions about some of the evidence that's been portrayed, like on TV programs.
Mhm.
And somebody who's in the field, like, no, I don't want you to take any disrespect to any of these questions I'm going to ask, because I am like I
Oh, you're all right.
believe, right? Because I've had my own experiences with, like, a light clicking, like, a turn knob on a light, right? You click it once on a
Yeah.
lamp. Well, so for instance, I was laying in bed with my wife at my grandfather's house for my uncle's wedding, and my grandmother died in the house, and we were in the room where her bed was. Her hospice bed is still there, and it had been like 10 years. So for that light to turn on, you have to click it on, and then it's at full brightness. And then if you keep turning it, it dims. And then to turn it back the other way, right? It gets bright again. And then if you click it again, it's off. So I watched this light. It was on, full brightness, went totally dim, all the way back bright, and clicked off. And I was
Wow.
like, I mean, I know that happened because I heard the click. My wife heard the click. Like, literally, something turned the knob. And so, like, I believe, but I got to ask, like, EVPs. I deal with audio all day long. I can look at audiograms and I can look at waves and go, that's an that's an that's the, like, I've been doing it for years. So when you do an EVP, and I assume, like, we don't hear that stuff come through, right? But it gets picked up on the recording.
Mhm.
Is it possible that, let's just say, on a TV program, they have somebody like you who knows the history, and then tells somebody, and then they record that. They say some cryptic stuff on the recording, then they rewind, record over it to, like, give the appearance that something was said, but in actuality, it's a setup. You know what I mean? Like, is
Mhm.
that possible? Could you I mean, do you think that goes on ever? Just a question I have off the top.
Oh, I think some people will try to falsify evidence and stuff, and then the only way that you can, like, disavow that is, like you said, someone like you might be able to see it on the wavelengths. There might be something weird there, but I mean, some people probably will go to those links just to get the fame out there in for it and everything. But like we use Atlanta has her sound recorder. I have mine, but we also do use the audio recorders on our phones and stuff too.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, we always listen to it over and over and over and make sure, hey, what do you guys think? I mean, there's been plenty where we thought it was this, but it was actually, then we looked back on the cameras and found out, oh, hey, it was one of us talking in the
Hmm.
distance. But I do believe, like what you said, I do believe that people would do that without a doubt.
All right. Second question. Probably one of the most notable things that is considered evidence today. In a previous life, I was a photographer. I don't mean that like ghostly previous life. I mean, like, 20 years ago, I was a wedding photographer. So um, when I see on footage orbs or balls of light, I think, yeah, that could be something, or it could be a bug, or it could
Yeah,
be, or it could be
dust.
like dust. How because I don't know. How do you, as an investigator in the paranormal, like, how do you go, that's definitely dust, or that's a bug, or that's an orb? Like, is there a checklist?
Oh yeah. There is actually a checklist. And I mean, orbs, like you said, they're one of the hardest things to actually prove because it could be anything from dust to a bug to actually a spirit. But the way you can tell most of it is, like, dust kind of like floats around and kind of has a little quality of like a balloon floating down and stuff from the ground. I mean, from the air to the ground. And it bugs, you can definitely tell sometimes they're bugs because the way they move. And then if you slow it down, then you can actually see the frame rate. And like, oh, that's a bug flying. That's not a orb. But when you look for orbs, you're trying to see if this orb is mainly presenting its own light source and everything. If it's like, I understand some people say, oh, well, that could be a lens flare. But like, yeah, it could be a lens flare. And it's like, but if you're in a dark room and you have a camera and you take a picture and then you see all these little specks everywhere, all over the thing, that's most likely dust. But if you take a picture and you just see like one little glowing little orb there, then you could be like, okay, let's try to knock this down the list. Because whenever we see something like that with an orb, I try to mainly pass it off as dust. But sometimes you'll see something of like, what was that? Like one of our pieces of evidence is we were at this old Paxton hotel, and I was sitting in a room, and it's completely dark, and we had a stationary like nanning cam sitting on me, and you see just a bright circle of light come out from my chest, and then it just disappears. And some people were like, "Oh, that might be a headlight," and everything. I said, "Yeah, it could have been a headlight, but the windows that were up there, they're all boarded shut, so there's no outside light in there." And that was one of the times where we could validate it looks like that. And also, there have been people that have caught orbs, and then if you zoom in on the orb, some people have actually caught looks like a hand inside the orb. But some people disprove that and say it's I can't think of what it's called, but it's a type of thing that the mind plays tricks on you. It sees like a shape, and it's automatically like, oh, it's a hand.
Yeah.
When it's just a coincidence.
Yep. I'm familiar with that. Like we all do that, right? Like Jesus and the toast or whatever.
Yeah.
Like we see some wild stuff. All right. So that makes sense. Like that makes me feel a lot more interested than in the phenomena of orbs. I mean, I watched the live stream when you guys did St. Joseph Lodge. Darin was like, hey, we're going to go live. And I watched, and he was sending me some behind the scenes stuff. And my son and I, we were watching it. He's hooked. Like he's a ghost investigator, like in his own little kid group. You know, they go into the woods looking for stuff, and so they have a lot of fun. He's super stoked and super interested. So you guys are like, he's going to watch this later and be like celebrity fawning over you all. So, but yeah, it makes me feel really cool, like to know that's definitely like you have a scientific process of looking at the ball, like the spheres, right? Because that always seems to me to be like so weird and bizarre. But yeah, I mean, if like a bug, right? There's a trajectory. If it's dust, it's likely falling down, right? But you make a great point saying that if there's no ambient light, then what's it reflecting, right? So I mean, maybe it's reflecting
from the IR.
Yeah, it could be reflecting IR, right? But I mean,
it's another question that you think about, because I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know if an IR light could shine off a piece of dust or a piece of like lamp flying through the air. I have no idea. So some stuff it could, like you said, it could be that, or I mean, Elena,
you would
she's
think
our
there'd
biggest...
be more of it. Like if it's dust, there's more, right? Like why would there just be the one singular piece that is flying around, goes into somebody and disappears?
Yeah.
So that's pretty wild. I'm not trying to be funny here, but let me ask this question. Like, it's so popular now. I can go to like discount stores like Five Below, and they sell sage to burn and cleanse your house, like where the incense is and stuff. So sage, does that work or not?
We've used it a couple times, and I mean, I know a little bit about the spiritual stuff with sage, and I mean, my fiance, her grandma's really into it. Her grandma sages everything all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, sage for me, it gives me an extreme headache, which some people in the paranormal community are like, "Ooh, that's kind of bad." I was like, but usually, but I found out there's a different type of sage that I think it's like a white sage that doesn't have any effect on me, but sage, it does work. We went to one place where we got done doing it, and then we saged the place. And I mean, sometimes it can either make the stuff stop, or it'll keep doing it and it won't bother you, or it could just piss off the entity that's there. Because it could have went from a peaceful entity, and then you did that and interrupted their little habitat they have going on there, and then they could become violent. But we haven't yet encountered anything that hasn't been like violent or anything like that. I mean, we've gotten some crazy stuff, like we set our spirit box down on a Ouija board at the Roth house, and I'm the biggest disbeliever in Ouija boards. But Matt set it down on the Ouija board, and we were talking to it, and then we kept hearing like something trying to come through, and we're like, "Can you tell us your name? Who are you? Why are you here?" And then you just hear Satan, like clear as day, the word Satan, and I was just like, and they all looked at me, and I was like, I don't believe in Ouija boards. I don't believe in Ouija boards, but that just came through the speaker box right there. I'm not gonna lie about that, but I'm the biggest disbeliever in Ouija boards ever.
Yeah, we have one, and when I was a kid, I was using one with a friend, and I always tell like my sons they always want to do it. I'm like, fine, whatever, and my wife is like, no, and I'm like, just let them do it, and so they do it, and my son's like, I swear it's moving, and I'm like, yeah, one of you is moving. I'm not. Yeah, you are. Like I always just tell him that, right? Like in my mind, I just can't fathom. I guess it comes down to trust, right? Like, do you promise you won't use this? Yeah, I promise I won't move it. Cool. Let's see what happens. And maybe it's like that mindset doesn't allow manifestation to happen or something, right? And because then nothing happens. But it is weird.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, there might be the rare occasions to where it can move the Ouija board and do it as you're doing it, and you're trusting the other people around you. But like I always say, it's like, if the Ouija board works, then why do I have to touch it? Why can't the spirit move it itself and talk to us that way? Now, if you can show me a moving planchette on a Ouija board, then I'll be like, all right, you proved me wrong. I'll admit that all day long. And if I see that evidence, I'm like, well, you just got the greatest piece of evidence ever. But
well, there was at Skinwalker Ranch, I guess they were doing a Ouija board, and they said the planchette flew off and like nailed somebody in the chest.
Yeah, that's one place that's on my paranormal bucket list, is definitely the Skinwalker Ranch. I watched the little mini series they had on History Channel and stuff.
We you have to listen. We did an episode of this program, I think maybe 1 or 2 episodes ago. We had Ben Williams on, and Ben and I we actually went out there. We hiked out to Skinwalker Ranch, got up on the ridge, looked down on the property, and did some independent investigations ourselves. It was pretty wild. Travis, Darin, I want to get into this investigation at St. Joe's, but before I do, I want to put a question to both of you that I think the listeners, watchers of the program are going to be really into, but I don't want you to, we're not going to answer the question, I think, until the very end. So think about it throughout the rest of the program. But the question is going to be, what's something that really had you scared, or what's the most scared you ever were in regards to like the paranormal ghost investigation, or maybe you were just by yourself not investigating something, but you had an experience. So, put that in your head and lock it away. Like a time you were really like, okay, got to turn all the lights on, maybe watch some TV, put my back against the wall, something. So getting into this paranormal investigation at St. Joe's, that lodge, you guys said that this door closed. I mean, if you get a home inspector in there, is he going to say like, well, you got a draft, or the door is not level, or like, what other excuses could it be?
Those are good points, Robert. But for anybody who's familiar with a Masonic lodge, it was basically the door, the inner door, the door that the officer, the Tyler, guards, and it was basically, it's the main entrance into the lodge. Those doors are really, really old and heavy, so it's.
I mean, and most time at lodge, but when we don't have it going on, that door is usually halfway open, and it stays halfway open. It won't like close shut slowly or open more. It usually stays pretty where it's at. And that door was open just a little bit, and it was just like something like the Tyler grabbed it and pulled it backwards towards him.
That's pretty
what I
bizarre.
thought.
And so on the inside of the lodge, are there other doors besides that one, other than the? Because okay, so for listeners of the show, if you're unfamiliar with the Masonic Lodge, right? There's what they call that inner door where the Tyler sits, and then there's a candidate door that's directly on the other side of that. They're here and here.
Yep.
And you go in, a candidate comes in this door, and then members go in this door, right? But those are usually the only doors. Do you guys have other doors in there that lead to the outside?
Nope.
No.
So
Those
no
are the only
suction.
two.
No.
Correct.
Dang. So that really begs the question, right?
Yeah, all the windows were shut. The heat or the air wasn't on. The
air,
downstairs door was shut.
Yikes. All right. So go ahead, Travis. Sorry.
I'll say the only other thing it could be is you just play it off as is like, oh, it's an old building. That's what some people would play it off.
Yeah, that
as.
seems like a really lazy catch-all, though, right?
It does.
So, all right. So you guys, this thing happens. You guys are like, oh, let's get the team in here. Let's check this thing out. Let's go to the night of the investigation.
Yeah.
Tell us about
So,
it.
I was the first one up at the lodge, and Travis had talked to me about clearing out some space in the candidate preparation room for them to set up basically their headquarters with their monitors to record their cameras that they set up and all of that. So I'm cleared that out. Travis showed up, and then his team showed up. We went downstairs out to greet his team and help them carry stuff up to the lodge, because the lodge is it's a 3-story building. The lodge room is on the 2nd floor. The 1st floor is retail space. And then the 3rd floor is basically half of the 3rd floor is an attic, and the other half is the kitchen area. So I was up there. Travis was up there. We go downstairs. We come back up. Immediately, we're hit with the smell of like brewing coffee. And there was nobody in the building brewing coffee. Now, full disclosure, the place below is a coffee shop. But they were A, closed, and B, I find it very hard to believe that that they have a coffee thing set up that brews coffee while they're not there. Just from a safety standpoint, if that's going on, we're having to have a conversation with them because they rent from us. I don't want them burning the building down, but it was extremely bizarre to smell that first, and then secondly, as I was bringing them towards the preparation room, the stairway up to the kitchen is on the left, right by the door to the preparation room. And I noticed that the upstairs light was on, and it was not on previously.
Yeah.
So like we went downstairs, we came back, that light to the kitchen was on.
Yeah, and no one had been in there maybe in what, like?
It was from our last meeting, so it would have been 3 weeks or so.
Yeah. Yeah, 3 weeks we weren't up there, and then the light was on.
I've heard of lodges and organizations leaving spaghetti out for 3 weeks because they forgot to put it away, but not the lights, because nobody wants to talk about the large electrical bill.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So that's crazy. So okay, so you started getting these little clues, and people have been talking about it forever. I remember years ago at Waukegan 78. We had a basement that was part of a furniture store, and they had knocked it out, and like there's alcoves and stuff, and it was part of the old electric company in Waukegan, Illinois, and just crazy. But nobody goes down there. Everybody calls it the dungeon. I mean, it's like stone, and you can go down there and you still see the old tin type roof in the basement, because at that time the road outside was 10 feet lower. Like, just like you find in archaeological sites, they're always, a civilization builds on top of stuff, and so it's still all there. uh and it's just interesting that everybody freaks out. Everybody's got a my old historic building is haunted kind of vibe. And I've seen a few specials on Travel Channel and on Discovery, whatever, where teams go into a Masonic lodge. Um, it feels like if there's going to be a place that's haunted, a Masonic lodge seems like a kind of place that might be haunted, but mostly I would say by like benevolent entities, because
Yeah.
these are usually, I don't know a better way, hometown guys, good dudes,
Right.
solid folks. Um, did you get that impression at St. Joe's,
Oh yeah,
or
for
maybe
sure.
not?
I
feel like
mean,
it's. Oh, go ahead, Darren.
no, you got it, Travis, and then I'll.
Oh, I
I'll
was gonna say,
chime in.
I feel like at St. Joe, it was one of the Lodge brothers there, and he was kind of interacting around me and Darren a little more than Matt and Jack. And Elena wasn't there because she was under the weather. But I felt like it was one of those, an older member, because he was interacting with me and Darren more, others so than the other two. And like I said, we got a name that came through, and then we think it's. I'll have to look up his name here in a second. But yeah, I think the spirit that's there is just the one guy. Maybe there might be another one, but they're just they're just there to hang out and see what's going on. I don't think they're any harm to us there at all.
Yeah, let me. I can look up the name really quick, Travis.
I think you actually texted the guy's name.
Yeah, I did. His name was Charles Dale, and
Yeah.
so the way that we figured out the name, and I'm honestly, Travis, based because I watched the video again, and based on how you asked the question, I'm not so sure that it's Dale per se that's the entity, but that it's the person who was serving as the master when Dale was senior warden. Because if you recall correctly, you asked Jack, I think, at the time when we were doing the Estes method, and we'll kind of discuss what the Estes method is here in a second. You asked him who sits in the seat behind you, and you were basically facing what we call the east in the lodge, where the head of the lodge sits, and directly behind you would have been where the second in command of the lodge sits. And he said, after you asked that question, he specifically said, like, Dale. And so we kind of didn't think much of it until after the investigation. I was kind of looking at pictures of the old past masters, and Charles Dale was a past master of the lodge, and I want to say in the 20s sometime, I think like 22 to 23, 1922 to 23. The lodge was built in 1914, so the building's been there over 100 years. The kind of the history of the lodge itself is interesting. A lot of the members basically had a schism with a lodge, which is a town about 4 miles east of here, which is Ogden, Illinois, and they were all members at Ogden, and they wanted to form their own lodge in St. Joe. And the members of Ogden basically, if you want to form a Masonic lodge, and I think more so at that point, you had to basically get the approval of the lodges that were in a certain mile radius around the place where you wanted to start the lodge. and Ogden would not give their approval. So they fought basically with Ogden for years and years and years until Ogden finally gave up and allowed St. Joe to have their own Masonic lodge. So the guy who was instrumental in forming the lodge was a dentist, and I forget his name now. Travis, I don't know if you remember or not.
Oh, I can't think of his name.
Anyway, he was a dentist, and he was one of the main members. He was like the second worshipful master, as the first worshipful master after the building was built, and he died really young. He died, I think, before he was 40. So the thought kind of was, if somebody was haunting the lodge, that he might be a candidate. But I've not gone back and looked through the minutes or done any investigation yet to see who was master when Dale was master. But with assuming that that answer that Jack gave was correct, I would say then that's probably our candidate, because if Travis asked who's sitting in the chair behind me, and he said Dale, well, Charles Dale was obviously senior warden at some point, because you have to be senior warden before you become the master of the lodge. So I think the person that was master when Dale was senior warden is most likely our candidate of who potentially is there.
That's some pretty good investigative work there, Darren. I don't know that I would have put that together. Darren, was this your first ghost investigation? Like, for real?
Yeah. This was my first one. Hopefully not my last, because I'm interested. There are some other places here in St. Joe that they want to look at, and we're probably going to have them out to our lodge in Homer as well, because Homer's building is about 50 years older than St. Joe's. So, I mean, it's been there for a very long time. But yes, it was my first investigation. And I mean, to be quite honest, I also, Robert, I am more on the believer scale than skeptic scale, but at the same time, I wanted to go into the night with an open mind. And there were things that I personally witnessed or experienced that I can only say that there's something to it.
Tell me about this.
Okay. So this occurred when Travis had asked me to do the Estes Method. And the Estes Method, Travis, why don't you go ahead and explain it, since I'm a layman and you're a professional.
So really quick, for those who are just listening, what I'm showing is Darren's hand. He had texted me the day after and said, this thing happened. I checked today. I got this scratch mark. Like, this is definitely a scratch. If you're watching, I mean, obviously, right? So I'm going to stop share. Tell me about this method, Travis.
All right, the Estes Method. It's a pretty old method, and you take a spirit box and you put headphones onto your head, and then you put a blindfold on, so you have no vision, and then your hearing is solely focused on the spirit box going on in there.
What's the spirit box? Tell us what that is.
The SB7 spirit box. It's a little device that you can either search radio stations forward or reverse, and it searches through the stations so fast it's like impossible for it to pick up any like radio stations. And that's what you see on the TV, where it's all like and it sounds like they're actually talking to something. But so that's what you're hearing in there. And you got the blindfold on, and someone sits across from you, and then that person asks questions. And what you're doing when you're blindfolded with the headphones on is you say whatever you hear come across. So that way, it's not like someone's saying, "Oh, well, I can't hear you." Basically, it's easier if you talk quiet, and it's easy to get credible evidence that way as well. When there's only two people going, and one person asks the question.
Because now you're not leading the witness.
Yeah.
Like they kind of don't know what you asked, and if you hear something, you just say it, and if it makes sense, well, that's kind of interesting, right?
Right.
Yeah. And
So
sometimes it's, yeah, when we did the Estes method before, the first time we did it was at a Oddfellows Lodge. And that was the first time I did it. And I'll tell you, it's first time it was a little like nerve wracking because you're just like, well, that was a little much. But every time you do it, it's kind of like an adrenaline rush. You're like, well, I want to do that again. And yeah, I mean, the Estes method, like Darin will say, it's a bit different than just sitting there looking around and stuff, and you feel a little different. But some people will think it's kind of crazy because you have like no senses at all, really, except your senses of getting feel. And when I did it this past weekend, I got poked in the ribs, and I didn't know that the team had asked him to come up and touch me. And then I was sitting there, and I said, it felt like something just poked me, and it felt like if the kid was just like poking their brother or sister, like poke, just to poke with you. It didn't hurt or anything. It just I felt the pressure there, and yeah. Let Darin tell you the rest of it.
yeah, so so I did it. I volunteered to do it. Why not, right? So um, I didn't hear. I couldn't make anything out from the spirit box other than then there seemed to be like something trying to communicate or something because like the static would change after what I perceived would be a question that Travis may have asked, because you can't hear what he's asking, but you can hear kind of like Travis explained it best, and this is probably the best explanation I can give. Like Charlie Brown's parents or the adults in a Charlie Brown cartoon where you hear like wah, 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 wah. So you can't make out what he's saying. I can tell that he's talking, but I can't make out anything he's saying. And as he mentioned, you're blindfolded and you have the headphones on with the spirit box going into your ears. So I felt like this extreme, like cold, like just like this bone chilling cold while doing it. And I I asked Travis after the fact. I didn't say anything during it, but I asked after I took my blindfold off and the headphones off if he had asked something to touch me, because I had felt what I perceived was I could only say it was a cross between like a tickle and when you have static electricity and you kind of shock yourself. It was kind of like a sensation between both of those on my hand, and it was in the area basically right where the next day I saw that my hand had been scratched.
Yeah. Yeah. When I sent that to the rest of the team, they were like, really? And I was like, yeah, he just sent that to me. And I told him, I was like, and if you remember, I told the spirit there to touch him. And they were like, oh, you did. And I mean, that's one of the first times I've seen something that, like, when someone's came along with it and it affected them. I mean, Elena's gotten scratched, Matt's gotten messed with, I've gotten like poked a couple times, and it's like Darin said, it's just like a bone. Like no matter when you do it, I remember doing it at where were we? When we were at Annabelle doing it, and it was so hot in there, and I just remember it was just like Darin said, it's just a bone chilling cold every time you do it. It just kind of feels like you're. The best way when people told me about it is like it's like you're sitting in the doorway of, like, when light meets the dark, you're kind of sitting there, and then you're the door basically, and you're just sitting there. So your back is to the darkness, and your front is towards the light, and you're talking for them. Is what you're basically doing. You're kind of acting like how someone, the leader in a seance, would be. How they say spirit communication, and then you ask questions, and then that person speaks.
So another thing that happened, other than that had me pretty convinced was, and I don't know the name of the tool, Travis, so you're going to help me out, but it's basically a motion detector, correct? It uses like infrared light to.
Yeah. Yeah. There we have two different kinds of motion detectors. The one is the Spirit Pod, and that one is the one you'll see on like Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, all those guys, to where when you go up and touch it, it turns different colors, and those colors will let us know which side of that they're on. Like if it's on the right side, then the blue light will light up. If they're on the left side, the green light will show up. But we had another one upstairs. It's only one color, but it's just so if you can see it in the distance, but it's extremely loud. And we've had it before, and we've used it every now and then, and we haven't got nothing with it. But I went and set it upstairs, and that thing kept going off. And I mean, I went up there more than once and stomped on the floor. We kind of stomped on the floor right down below it, and then we got it to do the interact from the second floor to the third floor, just yelling up the stairs, which was
when I hear things like these kind of boxes that go off, they set these alarms off. That sets off my alarms too, because I'm like, all right, these devices are designed to pick up whatever. They're not like these massive companies that have all this crazy quality control. Like these are like people who design these and are, they're experts in their field, sure, but they're like people who design these things and they're patenting them. Like, could there be false positives with this stuff? Like what is the trigger with those things? Is it static? Is it just like kinesthetic touch? Like what actually sets that off?
Either like the one that was upstairs, that one is motion and it's touch, but you have to like literally touch the antenna for that one to go off. But we use that one more for like vibrations, and if something walks by it, then it'll just make a loud beeping noise. And then the other one, if you have to get maybe like within, I'd say maybe like two inches of it before it'll go off. And then if you move it around, if you move your hand around it, the box will make different noises. And if you grab it, all the lights on it go off. But there are times to where you can make it go off, and you can be like, "Oh, that was me." Like if you're sitting there recording it with the camera and you get a little bit too close, it can affect it. Then if you back off and then go forward again, you can tell it was yourself. And then, all right, I need to back off from it, because like the camera every once in a while will affect it. And then when you're asking questions, that's why it's nice to have the one with a different color light, so you can stand away from it pretty far away and then still zoom in on it and get your evidence that way without being near it and then infecting your investigation and thinking you got a ghost, but it was just you doing that.
When this occurred, nobody was upstairs. I was standing by the monitors watching the camera feed. So I saw the light on it go off. There was not anything up there that potentially could have caused the thing to go off other than something interacting with it. Travis asked it to set it off 3 times, and rapidly it went off twice, and then there was a pause of about 5 to 10 seconds, and it went off the last time. And I watched the thing, I heard it, I watched it go off on the camera. There's nothing interacting with it upstairs. So yeah, that was pretty wild to me. That was basically I have no explanation for what's happening right now, how this could have went off. And this was prior to us doing the Estes Method. I'm hoping, Travis, hope that they got that recorded. I'd like to see that video just to show actually guys in the lodge to say, look, this is pretty crazy. I don't have an explanation for it. But that was probably the point in the evening that I went from losing a lot of my skepticism about these things, because as Travis said, we not just he but all of us were on the second floor stomping in that when we came back from our break after this all occurred. We had to get out of the building because it was just too intense. And when we went back up, all of us were there stomping on the second floor, trying to see if we could trigger it, if it was a vibration or something that set it off. Another thing that happened was I did knocked on the inner door 3 times and heard 2 thuds in reply after the knock. And not only did I hear them, Travis heard them. Some other people that were in the room heard the thuds. As Travis mentioned, there was the one EVP.
I asked how old you were, and you get a strict no.
Yeah, asked basically the question that was asked was, "Can you tell me how old you are?" And there was something saying no, and it was pretty firm no.
What if
And
that's like an illusion, right? They were like, no, because time isn't real.
if they had said time isn't real, then it would have been even more awesome. But
That would have been cool. Let me
Another
ask.
thing to
Go ahead, Travis, please.
one more thing to answer about like your wanting to know more about like those pods that we use. The bigger one, our spirit pod with the lights. When we were at Annabelle on Saturday, usually most investigators were like, "Can you light this up 3 times for me?" Well, I asked it to do it 3 times, and it did it 3 times. And then I asked, "Can you do it again?" And it did it again. And then someone else asked the question, and then I came up with a question. I was like, "Can you do that 4 times?" And then it went 1, 2, 3, 4. And they were like, "Why'd you do that?" I was like, "It's an odd number. I wanted to see maybe if it wasn't something triggering it." And I said, "Do it 3 times twice, and then do it 4 times." And then it did it 4 times when I asked.
So this thing is checking whatever it is. It's checking the box. If it's an entity, if something is there, that this is just fascinating to me, and actually like really fueling my desire to do some of this on my own. Maybe with some friends or whatever. So let me ask this question because I always am curious about it. What is it about ghosts or spirits or entities, malevolent, benevolent, whatever? When we're doing these shows or when I'm watching these shows, they're always like, it's a lock-in overnight. Like, why not during the day? Is there something, or is it just spooky?
Mainly during the night. Most people do it during the night is because we're humans and we want to see I want to see visual proof. You can show me a voice clip all day long, but some people I want to see actual video footage. And with our cameras, we get the IR light, and then you have night vision. But some places could be boarded up, and you could use night vision in there. But I mean, people have done investigations during the daytime and gotten more evidence than they would at nighttime with it and everything. And most people just do it at night just for the ambience. I believe it just makes it feel a little more easier, and it's at nighttime. So, I mean, also it's easier to do it at night if it's a location that has stuff around it, nobody's really awake. Like in Paxton at the Ford County Jail, there's houses all around you. And when we're there, if we hear something, we know it's inside there, not someone outside having a party or something.
Yeah, that's definitely fair and very scientific. I would say like less traffic, less lights, less pollution. Also, I think there's something to be said probably for I'm a believer in putting yourself in a state of mind that allows you to be in a good way susceptible to receiving, right? And so if you place yourself in kind of an uncomfortable situation, and maybe that just means turning the lights off because inherently like we're human creatures in survival, and we hunt and eat during the day and we sleep at night, right? So when's our danger period? Nighttime. So automatically biologically built into the DNA that we have, like we're always kind of a little bit on edge at night, just who we are as survival.
Your senses are a little more in tune at night, like you said.
Yeah.
We're humans. We're still animals on this world, and that's our instinct is to be a little more in tune at night.
All right. So I got a couple more questions. I think before we get to, I want to get this last question in, but number one, Travis, this is for you. Have you ever felt like you brought something home with you? Like I've heard people say, like something after this investigation, I was, personally felt wild and wonky for, a couple weeks, or I brought this thing home. I had to have a banishing done or whatever. Have you ever had any experience like that?
I felt like when we went to the Roth house. I mean, the whole time I was there, I was like, okay. I mean, everybody else there was having a good time, and I was just like, I was just kind of off that night. I mean, I was in a good mood the whole time, but it was just like something I just felt like I was being watched and just like looked at. And I'd say for probably like 2 weeks after that, like I had just some of the weirdest dreams, and some of like, and there was a couple times in those 2 weeks that my fiance, she had to wake me up in the middle of the night, and then I woke up and I was just in a cold sweat, and she's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll be fine." And sometimes after we leave some investigations, I'll go home and then have like a, because I have had night terrors before when I was younger. We're getting woken up in the middle of the night, but like I think something might have followed me home, but then just followed me home and left. But I'm not sure if something had followed me home, because I mean, here at my house, there's some stuff that happens every once in a while. Like something comes and goes, or I might have brought something home and then it just left. But I'm not sure. But I think Matt and Elena said that they felt like something followed them home one time, but it was just like, it's just one of those malevolent spirits that just was like, "Hey, I'm gonna tag along for the ride and check out your house. You came to mine, I'm gonna come to yours." But yeah,
Okay.
I do believe, to answer your question, I do believe that you can get followed home for an investigation, because I mean, it can attach itself to you with energy and just bring itself home. Because I mean, there's like the whole haunted items, like the haunted dolls, like Annabelle, and then I think it's Roger.
Robert,
Robert the
in
doll.
Key
I
West.
think Robert's a little more creepy looking.
I've actually got, I'll actually grab them. You guys will think I'm crazy, but give me a second.
I'm not a big. Porcelain dolls freak me out.
So this is a really funny side anecdote for the folks watching. Have a good time with this one. My mom gave my niece this antique doll that she found at a Goodwill, and it was still in the box. And she gave it to her, and we were all like, "Ugh," because this thing was just creepy. And my sister-in-law texted me the next day. She sent me a picture. They left the doll in the community like library box at the park because they didn't want to bring it home. And then, I think it was 2 days later, the doll was like totally dismembered and thrown, and just the head was left in the library, and the rest of the parts were out in the park. You know, the teenagers had their time with it or whatever, but
Yeah,
nobody likes those things.
yeah. I mean, my mom and dad, they collected them when I was younger. They still do. But when you walk in the front door, they had this big showcase, and they had all these creepy porcelain dolls sitting there. And they had this one, I call her the Queen, the Red Queen, because she sat in this little wicker chair, and she had this little enforcer dude who was like a little baseball bat boy. But I swear those things would move and stuff. And I mean, I'm all into going out in the woods at night with no flashlight, going in dark buildings. I'm all into the occult type of stuff. Not too much stuff scares me, but dolls, yeah.
My wife collects precious. She used to when we were dating, like 20 years ago. Used to collect precious moments, and I used to joke. I was like, those things, like they just make them to contain the souls of the kids who've died, right? And she's like, "You're terrible." I'm like, "You have to break them, and you set the souls free." What?
Yes.
Oh my God, Darin! What the hell is that?
So that's Robert. That's Robert the doll. I bought him when I went to Key West and saw the actual Robert the doll. Robert
Oh,
the doll
awesome.
is Robert the doll is a doll basically that is a guy in a sailor suit with the little lion. You can look him up. You can Google Robert the doll and see him. And he's he's in a museum down in Key West, and there's basically, in order to get Robert's picture, you need to ask permission. And there is, behind where they keep Robert, a bunch of letters and thing of people that took his picture and did not ask permission, and like just had bad luck. I mean, just like you can, it ran the gamut. But just kind of reading those pictures and that, and I truly believe that if there's something that has energy, whether it's malevolent or benevolent, it's not something you want to mess with. So I was sure to get get Robert's permission when I took his picture. But yeah, so
how does a doll give you permission? Just do you just like ask?
You have to basically ask and believe that he's giving you permission.
Okay.
But there are people basically that just would take the picture without asking, and these things these odd occurrences or bad luck or whatever would happen to them.
You gotta hold that doll up one more time, and like, yeah, now put it off just a little bit to the side, and no, bring him back in, right there. All right, bam, screenshotted that because that's gonna be our caption for this whole episode. So what's does he have a cross on his chest?
So he's a sailor, so it's actually an anchor. He's got a sailor
anchor.
suit on. Yeah. So
Dude,
it's an anchor.
That is
so
creepy.
look, I mean, if you go Google Robert the Doll right now, you'll see basically what he looks like.
I'm just gonna buy one of those and leave it in. I'm gonna leave it in my kid's room.
So everybody whoever comes and sees it in my room says it's the creepiest thing, but I like to think it protects me at night. So it's
Robert
like a dream
protects you.
Robert protects me.
That is amazing.
But if you're ever in Key West, make sure you see Robert the Doll, because it's I've got a book. It's called Haunted Key West. There's a lot of weird stuff that has happened in Key West. There's another case in Key West where there was a guy who fell in love. This is in the 1920s. Fell in love with this girl who had contracted tuberculosis, and he was a doctor, and ended up basically digging this girl up and stuffing her and like living with her as husband and wife. It's a true story. You can look it up, but
that's gnarly. That's crazy. All right. So St. Joe's Lodge.
Yeah.
First of all, Darin, is it haunted?
I believe there's something there, especially after the investigation. I'm more going into the investigation. I thought there's probably something going on here just because of what I had witnessed and others had witnessed. But I believe that it's, if you quote unquote haunted, it's not like there's a poltergeist and it's moving objects and throwing stuff at us. But there's something there. Yes.
Travis, what about your professional opinion there? Haunted or not haunted?
No, it's haunted for sure. Like Darin said, it's not something that's going to cause a ruckus, or it's not a poltergeist. He's just, it could be something that's intelligent, or it could be a residual haunt as well. But I think it's an intelligent haunting that will only speak to the right people.
That's fair. Yeah. So now I'm really interested. There's like this abandoned nursing home that's by me, where my wife works. I'm going to try to get in touch with the people who own the building and do an investigation there. I want to ask you this, Travis, because when you have any kind of notoriety in life, they always say, don't Google yourself. I think about that, and then I wonder, like, other areas where you shouldn't do things that pertain to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So is it a good idea or not such a good idea to like go out, buy some stuff like investigatory materials, SB7 spirit box, or these light sensors, or, EMF readers, whatever. Is there like a feeling in the community that you belong to that you shouldn't like check out your own house?
Some people, not a lot, some people will say, go ahead and investigate your house if you want to, because most of those people would love to live in a haunted house.
Yeah.
And some people will say, no, don't do it all. Or like, let's say the husband does the ghost hunting and the wife doesn't, but the husband wants to know if there's something there. And then if you find out there is, it'll freak out the wife. like my fiance, she loves watching paranormal shows and stuff like that, but she's like, don't bring nothing home with you. I don't want nothing that's haunted.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm all in, but I also have had some moments where like just I've never been like scared, but I've had numerous instances where I have heard, seen, and for no reason, like at one instance, real quick, I was sitting on a couch watching TV. Behind me is a landing to a staircase. I was up in a loft, and my dog at the time just like looked over at the loft, sat down, and started growling. And then all the hairs on the back of my neck just went up, and I was just like, okay, brought middle of the day, and I was like, that was creepy, right? So I kind of don't want to know if there's something in my house. I mean, I'm the second owner of this house. The people before us, moved out, so nobody's died here. But like, I'm also in Illinois, right? And in the Midwest, like, who knows if you're on like land that was not,
Yeah, that's another thing I was going to add into this. Right, what we're talking about now is just because, let's say, I moved into a house and I'm the first owner of the house. I'm the first one to live in this house. Just because you're the first owner doesn't mean that it's not going to be haunted. Like you said, maybe it was built on some like burial grounds or a site of a old war that might have happened. Like if you're over in Europe and you didn't know your house was built on like a ancient war site, and then you're like, oh, that's why I have activity, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think there's something to that. So I want to ask you now. I want to start with. We'll go back to Darin. Darin, what had you like scared poopless?
I don't know that I was necessarily frightened, but the cold sensation and the getting touched was pretty wild. I'll just say I didn't feel like fear per se. I mean, honestly, I feel more fear being up there just because it's creepy. Being in a lodge building by yourself at night is usually pretty damn creepy. But I actually now kind of have some solace in the fact that there's hopefully a brother up there watching out for us and making sure that we're doing the right things. So I didn't necessarily, in my brief experience there wasn't anything that like made me frightened at all. But yeah,
What about? Have you ever had another paranormal experience ever that like anywhere that you were like, weirded you out?
Told a few people know about this, but in my family on my mother's side, there's basically something that happens when a family member is going to pass, and that's one of the family members sees a bird in the house. And this happened when my great grandmother Casman passed away, and I guess it was 1983. I think my brother was like 3. I would have been 9 or 10. Probably it was, I think, summer, so I would have been 9 going on 10. And you were born in 83, right, Robert? Were you born 82, 83?
81, baby boy.
81. All right. So you would have been roughly kind of like my brother is born in 80. So he came to my dad and I, and his face was lit up, and he was excited as get out that there was a bird in his room. And so my dad and I run to his room. We can't see anything, but you can tell that he's seeing something. He's absolutely fixated on this thing in his room that neither dad or I can see. So fast forward to 2002, it was Mother's Day weekend, and my Uncle Dennis, who was my Aunt Carol, which is my mom's sister. She's the middle sister. My mom has 3 sisters. The oldest is Pat. Carol's the middle, and then my mom's the baby. And they were leaving. And as I was saying goodbye to them, I saw what I can only describe as a spectral bird fly right over my uncle's head. It was like this black flaming, just super. It was supernatural. There's no definition for it. It wasn't a hallucination. I know nobody else saw it because I was the only one. Nobody else said anything to me about it. I know what I saw, and it creeped me out because I knew what it meant. And 2 weeks later, my uncle had an aneurysm and passed away.
Wow,
And
that
then
is a premonition for sure. Well, so the bird is like symbolically is always referred to as is perhaps indicator of the transition, the impending transition of a biological living entity, right? So, like birds pecking on windows or that kind of thing. But I have never heard of anything like what you described. That's pretty wild. I would say crazy, but I know you're not crazy, so
yeah, well, I was pretty much I would say hardcore agnostic, bordering on atheist when this happened, and after seeing that, I knew that there had to be a higher power. There was something else. I mean, you can't have an experience like that and go away from it and be like,
Yeah.
I knew. So I mean, I guess I was doubting Thomas, and I had to poke my fingers into the wounds or whatever to believe in the resurrection. Same thing with me. I had to have this type of experience to make me believe that there's a higher something. I don't know what to name it. I don't. But yeah,
that's incredible. Incredible. Travis, how about you? What's the most you've ever been scared? Either in an investigation or whatever, wherever.
Other than going in on Thursday, but you can't answer that.
I'd say probably I was in maybe it was a freshman, and I was with my friends, and we were out cruising around a local legend area called Dogtown. Just a bunch of woods, and there's all kinds of different stories out there for Dogtown. But I remember we stopped to take a pee under the old twin bridges, and I remember sitting down there, and it was quite foggy outside, and it was just me, and then there was like three of us there, and we were peeing, and all of a sudden we look over and we see something walking towards us, and we thought it was like people. So we said, hey, what are you doing? And it just kind of like kept walking at us, and you could hear the footsteps, and like you could tell something was there walking at us, and then just kind of like disappeared, and you can hear somebody messing with the car up on the road, and freaked us out. So we all grabbed like rocks because that's all we had, rocks, and we were kind of drunk at the time too. We run up there and there's nobody around. We kind of look at each other and we're just like, whoa. And one of those guys was my brother-in-law, and then my buddy, one of my best friends, and Juan, he's terrified of like paranormal type of stuff, like all the old buildings on base. He wouldn't go into them with us when we were younger. He's like, no, I don't want to go in there. But yeah, we all encountered that night, and I'd say that's what stuck with me. But another time that kind of startled me a little bit is I've had a shadow figure follow me around for a long time, and I've told him to go away before once or twice, and I told him to go away one time, and I haven't seen him for a long time. But there was one time to where I had seen him, and when I fell asleep, I had seen him stand at the end of my bed, and in my dream, I had opened my eyes in my dream, and I looked over, and I could see him standing there, and then like the lights came on, and there was just this, I don't know how to describe it, like this old guy. He didn't have like white hair or anything. He had eyes, but his eyes were kind of like sunken in, and his jaw was real pronounced and everything, and there was no abnormal features, but he was just standing there staring at me. He didn't really have he had a hat, and it was kind of weird to describe the hat. It was almost like the Undertaker's hat, if you guys know who I'm talking about, the wrestler.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that, but a little smaller, and he was just standing there and just had this blank, emotionless expression on. I remember I woke up, and when I woke up and I was ice cold, and I woke up in an ice cold sweat. Usually I wake up in hot sweats, but that one was like the worst it's ever been. My sheets were a little soaked, and that's kind of stayed with me for a long time. Like he know he can't mess with me out here in this world, so he's going to come inside my mind, and maybe it's my mind playing tricks on me, or what if it's the actual spirit messing with me? And that's where it kind of scares me. Is like this is my body and everything, and I don't want something like that happen to me, because I mean I believe in like demonic possession and spiritual possession. I do believe that could happen.
I think there's a lot of evidence to show that possession meets certain criteria that cannot be explained by a physician. And in those cases, I mean, I'm not I don't belong to like the Catholic Church or anything, but the Catholic Church has for years they have a whole system
Mm-hmm.
that, before they send an exorcist out, that you have to meet this criteria. And oftentimes when they do get sent out, and the proof is kind of in the pudding too. It's not people looking for publicity, right? Because you don't hear about the cases unless you really dig.
Right.
They go out, they perform the exorcism, and everything's back to normal. So, like, what is that all about? Yeah, I think that stuff can be legit.
And I know they have to get proof, like if a bishop here in Illinois want to perform an exorcism, like you said, they have to meet all the criteria and then get approval from the Vatican itself before they can even start one.
Yeah, something like that has to go all the way to the top. Like,
right.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And fun fact, the exorcism ritual's the only ritual left in the Catholic Church that they still perform in Latin.
The magic language.
Well, I'm just saying.
I
always said that if they kept saying Mass in Latin when I was a kid, I probably would still be. I'd probably still go to Catholic Church just because I think it's fascinating.
There's a pull. There's a pull to the mystique, to the mystery, and I think that's valuable. Well, that's it for this episode. I want to thank my co-host Darin for being with us and doing this program. I want to thank our special guest, Travis.
Thanks for having me.
Travis Kane, where can people find you? It's Ghost Net Paranormal.
Yeah, just Ghost Net Paranormal. We're on Facebook. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we're on YouTube. And we do have a TikTok, but we don't do too much on the TikTok. We'll just usually upload our evidence on there.
How often do you guys? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But mainly, we're usually always on Facebook. Is the best way to get a hold of us. Is on there.
So if people get a hold of you, if they want to do an investigation, can they get a hold of you through there?
Yeah, they can get a hold of us there. And investigations, we don't charge any money for investigations. If you have something at your home and you want to know what's there and see if we can't let you help see what's there or help you try to get rid of it, we'll do that for you.
Awesome. We'll make sure we put some links and show notes there just below the video for everybody out there. You can hit these guys up at those links. And that's it for this episode. So I want to thank everybody, and we'll talk to you next time on Beyond the Fourth Veil. Take care, everybody.